Right now, first at 4, the world reacts to the death of Queen Elizabeth. Her reign, the stuff of legend. We have team coverage for you from London to reaction around the world. And we're going to talk about Charles, now King Charles III. We have a full hour of royal coverage ahead, as well as the day's news right here in the Chicago area. We start at the palace, first at 4. And we begin with a live look at Buckingham Palace, where on a rainy night in London, mourners keep gathering to honor their fallen monarch, Queen Elizabeth, dead at the age of 96.
The Queen died at Balmoral Castle, her estate in the Scottish Highlands, where doctors had placed her under medical supervision. Her son, Charles, and many other members of the royal family rushed there to be by her side.
She was Britain's longest reigning monarch, a queen the world has watched for 7 decades.
Now the crown has passed to her oldest son, and Prince Charles has become king. Buckingham Palace announced her death, saying the Queen had died peacefully. Also in that announcement, saying that the King and the Queen will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London come tomorrow. Elizabeth reigned since 1952, and the world is mourning her loss.
President Joe Biden says Elizabeth was more than a monarch. She defined an era. A statement issued this afternoon reads in part, "In a world of constant change, she was a steadying presence and a source of comfort and pride for generations." The statement goes on to say, Queen Elizabeth II was a stateswoman of unmatched dignity and constancy who deepened the bedrock alliance between the United Kingdom and the United States. Let's take a live look at the White House. Flags have been ordered to fly at half staff there. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was informed of the Queen's death during her afternoon briefing, and the news initially leaving her speechless.
Our hearts and our thoughts go to the family members of the Queen, goes to the people of the United Kingdom.
The French president expressing his condolences on Twitter, writing in part, the Queen embodied continuity, and the unity of the British nation over 70 years. I retain the memory of a friend of France, a Queen of Hearts who marked as never before her country and her century. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tweeted, "It is with deep sadness that we learned of the death of Her Majesty Queen. On behalf of the Ukrainian people, we extend sincere condolences to the royal family, the entire United Kingdom, and the Commonwealth over this irreparable loss."
Queen Elizabeth II's death brings to a close a reign that again spanned 70 years and made her the most recognized woman in the world.
Martha McCallum looks back on her legacy.
Queen Elizabeth II was born into the royal Windsor family on April 21, 1926. At birth, as the oldest daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York and niece to the King, no one expected that little Elizabeth Alexandra Mary would one day be the longest-serving and one of the most respected rulers of Great Britain. In 1945, at age 18, the young princess trained as a driver and mechanic in the Women's Auxiliary Service. Like thousands of others, she also had a sweetheart in the armed forces, her third cousin, Prince Philip of Greece. They were engaged to be married shortly after the princess's 21st birthday. But in 1952, while in Kenya with Prince Philip, Elizabeth learned the tragic news that her beloved father, the king, had died. In an instant, the 25-year-old became the Queen of England. Elizabeth was to rule in a new era. Her coronation in all its splendor was the first to be broadcast on television. But with the 1990s came turbulent times for the royal family as the marriages of 3 of the Queen's children fell apart. Then, in 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales and mother to the Princes William and Harry, was killed in a car crash in France. At the time, the Queen was criticized for her reserved response and persuaded to make an unprecedented live broadcast. But as she had so many times before, the Queen persevered. From an early age, Queen Elizabeth was one of the most recognized royals and recognized women in the world. She managed to combine the truly regal with a countrywoman's simple pleasures, and she embodied old-fashioned values of virtue, faith, and self-restraint, honoring to the very end the pledge she had made when she was just 21.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
As monarch, the Queen is automatically granted a publicly funded state funeral. Details for the funeral are expected to be released by the palace very soon.
Her eldest son, Charles, is now the King of the United Kingdom, and we have just learned that he's going to address the world tomorrow.
And joining us now is Tom Makaitis, a history professor at DePaul University. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Good evening.
Let's talk about this. Can you speak on the history of the Queen and why she's such an iconic figure even across the pond?
Well, it's not just that she reigned for such an incredibly long period of time. She did so during a period of tremendous transition. When she ascended the throne in 1952, Britain was still one of a handful of major world powers. And there was, obviously a precipitous decline as it rapidly lost its empire and fell out of that first rank. So she provided a sense of continuity and stability. And, there's no denying there was a graciousness and a charisma about her, even though she was quite reserved, that I think even was somewhat disarming to many people. And I think that made a lot of these transitions, it's hard to say at the level, but she remained popular for most of her reign with a few bumps here and there.
Now taking her place is her eldest son, who hasn't always been as popular there in England and around the world. He is now the new king. Talk to me about your thoughts about this succession.
You're absolutely right. It is the beginning of a new era, and he does not have the popularity or the personality of his mother. In fact, in the aftermath of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, there was even talk of, bypassing him and having William ascend to the throne. Of course, the Queen put that to rest. But after the mourning dies down and everything else, there's going to be attention paid to the cost of the monarchy. He's already mentioned he wants to cut back on some of that in the interest of the public good. We'll just have to see. Queen Camilla is technically queen consort. She's not reigning. But there was controversy about that as well. That all seems to have blown over. But I don't expect him to be greeted with the kind of praise and the kind of popular support and love that his mother had.
All right, Professor Tom Makaitis, thank you so much for giving us your insight here on First at 4.
Happy to do it.
Queen Elizabeth was the first reigning British monarch to visit right here in Chicago. That happened in 1959.
And sadly, it was her only visit to the Windy City. Nate Rogers is live outside the British consulate with local reaction to the Queen's death. Nate?
Yeah, that's right, Tia and Sally. Lots of sorrow and really heartfelt emotion here outside of the British Consulate General. Also, many people here in downtown Chicago sharing their special memories of Queen Elizabeth and her connection to Chicago. In fact, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited Chicago, as you all just mentioned, in the summer of 1959. It was the first visit of a reigning British monarch to the Windy City. Also, their only stop in the U.S. during a tour of the Great Lakes. Her Majesty was 33 years old at the time. Now, according to reports, they were here about 14 hours, invited by then Mayor Richard J. Daley. The Queen greeted crowds near the lakefront, also took part in a parade down Michigan Avenue with thousands of spectators standing by. The Queen's other stops included Navy Pier, the Art Institute of Chicago, and the Drake Hotel. As mentioned, the Queen died earlier today at her Scottish estate. She was 96 years old. We spoke to British natives just a short time ago about the Queen's passing. Take a listen to what they shared.
Regardless of if you're pro-monarchy, anti-monarchy, or someone like myself, kind of indifferent, I think she's been on the throne for 70 years, so the vast majority of people haven't experienced a time where she hasn't been there. And I think most people can agree, regardless of your thoughts on the monarchy, she's a pretty good person.
I mean, I'm only 23, but she's been a symbol of the nation my entire life. When I think of any sense of who I am as a Brit, the Queen comes in.
And also noteworthy, the Queen reportedly had some emergency dental work done here during her tour at the time. She apparently had an aching tooth that needed to be addressed. As she left the city, according to the Tribune, she told then Mayor Daley, quote, "This is an unforgettable day, a day I will never forget." That is the latest here in downtown Chicago. Nate Rogers, Fox 32 Chicago.
All right, Nate, thank you so much for that report. Well, this is the royal website, and as you can see, it has gone dark following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Take a look. The website notes that it's temporarily unavailable and currently has an image paying homage to the late Queen.